By far my favorite station.
You're the best. Oh, yeah.
I love you guys.
This is UK Talk Radio, with the music you love and the chat you enjoy.
By far my favorite station.
You're the best. Oh, yeah.
I love you guys.
Today on UK Talk Radio, we're talking to Anya Audette. So we're going to talk about your new single, which you're playing on UK Talk Radio, Anyone Who Had a Heart. So tell us a little bit about the song and why you chose this particular classic song.
Hi, everyone. So basically, I'm a huge Burt Bacharach fan. And I am, I've been singing professionally for quite some time, about over 40 years. I was in musical theater and I've always wanted to retouch some old standards, some old things that maybe the kids don't know. So I picked Anyone Who Had a Heart. It had a little bit of a storyline in terms of love and finding love, basically that anyone who had a heart can look at the person across from them and fall in love. And if not, then find another heart. But that's basically what it was. So I did a version of it that'll be on the new album next year. That I'm not going to do any spoilers. That one's actually fun too, because I collaborated with some folks. But this one, I worked with a producer out of the UK by the name of Owen Norton. And he basically reimagined and remixed this for me with our collaboration together. So, yeah, that's why I chose this one.
And as you mentioned, you're going to put together an album of Burt Bacharach's songs. So what is it about that particular songwriter that draws you to his music?
Music from that era had stories. And those stories, they made Dionne Warwick famous. I'm a huge Dionne Warwick fan. And actually, Doja Cat reimagined Walk On By. I think it's something about Paint the Town Red. Thanks. My daughter's telling me what the song is, but it's Paint the Town Red, and I heard it. I just always have loved his music. I love singers that tell stories. I love storytelling, and I can see visions of what that is. It's all before MTV. I could always be a storyteller. All my years of singing, I always go for the obscure. I always go for the underdog. I always go for the non-hit per se. It was Anyone Who Had a Heart was a hit for her, as well as Cilla Black. Huge fan of all the UK girls, Dusty Springfield, Cilla Black. They made a resurgence with the movie Last Night in Soho. I love that soundtrack. And I was in London last year, and this came to me. I said, you know what? I'm going to do something fun. I'm going to reimagine a lot of his tunes. And I had forgotten those tunes until I watched this movie on the plane on my way to London. So it kind of reinvigorated me. And I was like, okay, I want to do some fun stuff.
So taking you back to your childhood, when did your music interest first begin? Was it to listening to music on the radio? How did it all start for you?
It all started for me at my grandmother's house. She had a hi-fi. If anybody out there doesn't know what a hi-fi is, it's basically a piece of furniture that has a record player inside. On the 45s, you can put this little stack. You put this cone down in the middle of the hi-fi, and they all fall. They drop like the old jukeboxes used to do. Or if you did albums, you could stack those as well, and they played one after the other after the other. So my grandmother had a hi-fi. My mom had a hi-fi. My mom was a 60s hippie. She introduced me to the Beatles. She introduced me to everything. My grandmother introduced me to Patsy Cline and Charlie Pride. She had a country western interest, jazz. But between the two of them, and then my dad, he is the cousin of one of the 50s groups, doo-wop groups called the Orioles, because I'm originally from Baltimore. So I've had music influence. My grandfather played the trombone. My uncle played the trumpet. So music was always a part of my life. I started music when I was about 5. I had voice lessons from about 12 on. I still take my voice lessons. So I've been really inspired, especially by women of that era. You know, the Dionne Warwicks, the Supremes. Like I said, all my UK girls. I've always loved the UK girls. That's where it all started. Basically, you know, my mom kind of told me when I was going to go into show business to be well-rounded. as a Black woman, just to be well-rounded, know all things, make yourself marketable before marketing was a thing, before the internet was a thing. So that's where I learned a lot.
And, can you remember when you first started singing? When did it go from something you were listening to and your parents had introduced you to suddenly you actually discovered, well, do you know, I've got a voice. I actually can sing. So when did that start?
So my favorite musical of all time is West Side Story. One of my favorite divas of the Broadway and film stage is Rita Moreno, because Rita Moreno and Dorothy Dandridge, again, I was exposed to some great film. And I got to play Anita later on in life, but that was when it happened. I used to sing in my backyard. I used to do shows at cookouts and do all the parts of America and dance them all and play both parts, the men's and the women's, and did the whole thing by myself. So that's when it started.
Wow, fantastic.
It was a mess, but it started. Absolutely. You got to start somewhere.
Absolutely. You have to start somewhere. That's absolutely it. Small beginnings for all of us. And obviously from that, you mentioned West Side Story, which is classic. Mm-hmm. Also, you mentioned musical theatre. So that's also part of your background. Tell us a little bit about musical theatre and where that interest came from.
So that movie, I said, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. And my mother knew what I wanted to do. My mom and dad, my dad is a blue collar worker and my mom worked for the government. Neither one of them were in show business. And I said, this is what I want to do. And both of them wanted me to, well, not so much my dad. My mom wanted me to have a backup plan. And I said, I'm not going to have a backup plan. This is what I want to do. She's like, well, what if you fall, break your leg? And this one said, I'm not going to do a backup plan. So now, 50, 40 some years later, she said to me, I'm so glad you didn't have a backup plan. I'm like, yeah, I don't have a backup plan. That's when it started. She made sure that I was able to have voice lessons, dance lessons. I took drama in high school. So it was all throughout my youth. And even now, as I'm older, shows. I always loved to do shows. I wanted to do stories and act. And it's not so much acting. It's not so much singing a song. It's being able to interpret it for the audience to feel what you're feeling on stage. And, I love that. Actually, I got to see Madonna on Tuesday, talking about theatrics. And I realized why I loved her. I realized why Madonna's Madonna. And that's been my life, all through the 80s, 70s and 80s. I studied musicals. I loved watching musicals. So I did that. And my mom and dad made sure that I had the lessons that I needed to conquer that. And then I still keep that up. So, yeah.
I mean, that's fantastic that they gave you support, because it will be easy to say to a child, well, look, maybe look at that in another 10 years' time, but you really need to look at a serious occupation. So that must have helped you tremendously to have that back and to have that support.
Yeah. Oh, I had great support, and I give it to my daughter as well. She's creative. She used to do choir and all that kind of stuff, but now she's in college. She's getting ready to graduate, and hers is more fashion and design and trying to turn the world upside down. That's her vision. My mom was fortunate enough to march with Dr. King. She was at the March on Washington. So when Black Lives Matter appeared or, happened here in the United States and all over the world, my daughter marched 50 some years later, the same thing. And so we have this pattern, the three of us, of these strong women. And so she's a creative being as well. And she's taught me a lot, even in this project that I'm doing is due to her support and pushing and kind of keeping me hip of what's out there on the radio and what's going on, and kind of keeping me abreast of the things that are on the radio. So I've got a nice foundation of people. Because
support is important, is it, for an artist? You do need
correct.
You can't do it on your own.
I like this independent artist track because all of us feel the same way. We just want to get our voices heard. We want to do what we can to be out there and about, and hopefully it'll appear or it'll ping somebody's ear. The EP is slow, but I'm getting some streams. Some people are really enjoying it. a couple of guys are independent artists at where I work, and they heard a couple samples of things that I did in the studio, and they were like, "You got to keep going. This is good stuff." And they're young, they're 20 years younger than me, so it appealed to them. So they were also a great influence and a great aspiration as well.
Well, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. And the most important thing, we wish you all the best with the new album that you're working on.
Thank you. Thank you.
The single, Anyone Who Had a Heart, that's available now on the EP. So tell us where we can purchase either the single or the EP.
Sure. I'm on Apple Music. So the album is called Random. It literally was random thoughts in my head. So there's that dance track is on that album, but there's also some EDM tracks that are a lot of fun that I kind of made up out of my head. Like I said, I was laying in the bed one random night and I heard Moonlight Sonata and I'm like, I'm going to make this a dance tune. So it was kind of like that kind of randomness. So you can find me on Spotify. You can find me on Apple Music. You can find me on Amazon Prime, Deezer. Those are the platforms. My website is theanyaAudette.com, and you can click on any of the streaming platforms, and the music will play. I would love your support.
Brilliant. Well, it's been a pleasure to talk to you, and all the best with those songs. And thank you for talking to us.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate you.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Bye-bye.